So let's get right to it. Ms. Lauren Traister is the Teen and Leadership Program Coordinator for the University of Vermont Extension's 4-H program. Her work includes promoting positive youth development and teaching youth leadership, citizenship, and life skills. Her webinar topic today is authentic youth engagement. So welcome, Lauren.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. I was told to turn my mic off, and then I couldn't figure out how to get it back on.
Yeah, I clicked it on for you.
So good morning, everybody. I'm quite pleased to have you join me, and this topic I find to be really critical to today's youth and just everything that is going on societally, and I'm just going to jump right into it. So today we're going to talk about authentic youth engagement. Young people are powerful contributors to society, but too often adults don't seek or hear their voices. So Youth Voice is not about letting youth help, but it's about working with youth as partners, leaders, and advocates to improve the world. My hope is that what you learn today will be a catalyst for you to engage youth in leadership and decision-making more effectively for a more authentic youth engagement experience. So we've all heard the expression, kids should be seen and not heard, and I'd like to change that. And I'd like you to write into the chat box how you would reword this expression. So go ahead, take a moment, and give me your thoughts. Kids need to be seen and heard. Kids should be seen, heard, and responded to. Kids should be seen and heard. Kids have great ideas too. Consider everyone's ideas, not just that of grown-ups. These are all great examples. I actually presented the same question to a group of youth last week, and what they came up with was kids should be seen and heard and listened to by everybody and respected. The one thing that they didn't add, which I might add, is that they should be taken seriously. And I think that's what they had meant by respected. But they really want to make sure that when they speak up, that not only are they listened to, but they are really taken that their opinions are taken seriously and that they are respected. So this is something to consider as we move throughout the morning. So we're going to have our first poll. I'm curious how you feel about this statement. Youth Voice is all about youth. Give a check mark if you think it's true, and the red X if you think it's false. Good. It looks like most of you are saying false, and that's right. Youth Voice cannot ever be all about youth. What you will learn today is that Youth Voice is about youth and adults working in common together. Youth Voice is about communities and democracy and all people. So our next poll, just to see where we're at, is let me know what you think about this statement. It is too hard to engage young people when I can just do the work myself. Check mark for true, X for false. Well, that's good. Most of you think that's false. It is actually really hard, and any seasoned youth development professional will tell you that it's an everyday challenge to engage young people. But there are huge rewards if you actually do engage them, and we'll discuss what those rewards are as we move on this morning. So what is Youth Voice? Youth Voice is more than making kids heard. It is the perspective, ideas, experiences, knowledge, and actions of young people. It is empowering young people with purpose. And the outcomes are great. Engaging young people can build a strong sense of community, a commitment to civic action, and a passion for active learning. There's a cycle of Youth Voice, And this is a process that everyone can use to engage young people throughout their communities. The most important thing to remember is that Youth Voice is more than simply hearing, checking in, or talking to young people. Youth Voice is action, and action fosters engagement. So the first part of the cycle is listen. You know, you all know the drill. You're at your desk one day, working away on an important project, when someone comes in really excited saying, hey, listen to this. And you tilt your head a little and maybe you lean towards them, but you keep doing whatever you're doing. You're not really listening, are you? You might be hearing them talk and you might even understand what they're saying, but you're not really thinking about it or feeling it. That's the difference between listening and hearing, and that's where Youth Voice starts. When people have an actively engaged audience to listen to their ideas, opinions, experiences, knowledge, and or actions. However, listening is just the first step. Youth Voice, real authentic youth engagement requires more. We need to validate. You've heard people say it, and you might have said it yourself. Oh, that's really nice. You know, we try to say nice in just the right way, but to young people it seems really insincere. We think we're doing the right thing by encouraging young people to move forward, but in our heads we're really thinking about the time we fell flat on our face from the exact same approach. So instead of hiding our true thoughts, it's the job of adults to honestly validate what young people say or do by honestly reacting to it, how we sincerely feel or think about it. So if we think an initiative will fail, we need to say so. Validation means agreeing or disagreeing as we honestly believe, and respecting young people enough to explain why and search for alternatives if appropriate. Authority is an awesome word that can be intimidating for young people as well as adults. However, without authority, Youth Voice is just a hollow cry in a loud argument. By building the skills of children and youth to engage in democracy, adults can provide practical steps toward actual empowerment instead of just blank words. As well as the skills, we, the adults, we must engage young people in activities that are actually powerful, purposeful, and rewarding. As young people apply their new skills to practical action, Youth Voice gains that authority that is needed to make a difference. But Youth Voice doesn't just happen. It must be actively engaged. Taking action for Youth Voice requires youth and adults working together to make the space, place, and ability for young people to create change. Action can and should look different everywhere, from identifying the challenge, researching the issue, planning for action, training for effectiveness, reflection on the process, to celebrating the outcomes. Youth Voice is totally flexible, but the purpose of engaging youth is not. The purpose of Youth Voice is always to create, support, and sustain powerful, purposeful, and meaningful communities for everyone to belong to. But I want to just mention one important caution here. Action is usually seen as the most important step. However, this makes positive outcomes the most important thing. And as you know, and we've all experienced, for many issues, positive outcomes rarely come. Or if they do, they don't come for the current generation of youth involved. For many young people, it's really the next step that is the most important component of Youth Voice. And that's reflection. Reflection may be the most important ongoing step to engage in youth. When young people and adults critically assess and analyze Youth Voice, learning becomes a vibrant, intricate, and powerful tool for change. Reflection activities usually should be appropriate for diverse learners. So you could use things like writing, acting, creating collages, or building activities, anything that will get at that reflection. And once your group has finished reflecting, those lessons should be incorporated into the next listening activity to support a cyclical approach to Youth Voice. So this cycle of Youth Voice just keeps going around and around. So why is Youth Voice important? There's a study that was done by the University of Wisconsin at Madison in combination with the Innovation Center for Community Youth and Development, which is a division of the National 4-H Council, that stated there's a number of effects that young people can have on adults and organizations by being included in the decision-making process. So the benefits are threefold. You have benefits to youth, you have benefits to adults, and you have benefits to the organization as a whole. So some of the benefits to the adults working with youth are things such as adults now begin to view the competence of youth, and they perceive them as critical to the organizational improvement. Adults also have an enhancement of their commitment to the organization. They feel more effective and competent in working with youth, and they also develop a stronger sense of community. So those are some benefits that the adults feel from these kinds of interactions. Organizations benefit by having youth involved because youth can help clarify the organization's mission. Organizations become more connected and responsive to youth in the community. Organizations may place a greater value on inclusivity and representation. Organizations become more appealing to potential funders. And organizations often now become more active in the community that they're in. Now the benefits to youth are great. Youth have an increased self-esteem, popularity, sense of personal control, and enhanced identity development. They also have a greater development of life skills such as leadership, public speaking, dependability, and job responsibility. They have a greater communication with their family. They have less involvement in risk behaviors like drug use and juvenile delinquency. They're usually doing better academically, and they usually have an increased safety. So there's a lot of benefits that come out of youth voice. So I'm just curious at this point, if you were to rate your organization today, where are you on this spectrum? Are your programs and activities to youth, for and with youth, or with youth? And if you could just mark A, B, C, or D, we'll take a quick poll. Looks like we have a lot of C's and a few B's. So that's great. So it seems like a lot of you are coming to the table with a lot of experience. And hopefully today will get you further along in the process or getting better results. So there are some key principles to authentic youth engagement. What's needed to make an experience truly meaningful and real, there's usually a set of conditions that are present. And these conditions can feel difficult to pin down, but I'm going to give it a try for you all. So authentic youth engagement is collective. And what that means is activities are led by youth and adults together, not individually. They're connected. Activities embody interdependence and model it among youth and adults. Activities are also empowering. Youth voice is a driving force throughout the activities. And they're equitable. Adults recognize that young people have differing backgrounds that require different approaches. These activities need to be focused, meaning they need to be outcome-driven. And they also need to be healthy, which means a respectful disagreement needs to be allowed. You need to allow for everybody to speak up and have avenues that will get results if there are disagreements or any disparities. They need to be learning. Young people want to gain skills and knowledge and tools to be effective agents of change. They need to be mutually beneficial, which means both young people and adults acknowledge each other's dreams, actions, and outcomes so that there's benefits for all involved. They need to be relevant to the lives of young people. And responsible means that adults and youth have to be responsible to each other in the ways that they communicate and follow through. The activities need to be substantive. The outcomes are designed to impact individuals, organization, communities, and society. And they need to be self-motivated, whereas young people are feeling driven to participate. So those are all things that are going to make up an authentic youth engagement program or activity. Those are the things you're going to be looking for. Now, some of you maybe have seen this model before. This is the ladder of youth voice. So for a long time, the only formal position young people held in society was that of a young person. But that's changed. Today, young people increasingly have more important positions, including that of decision maker, planner, researcher, and more. So this ladder of youth voice was created to encourage youth and adults to examine why and how young people participate throughout communities. And I'm going to go through each rung on the ladder, and then I want you to assess where you are. And it's a little bit similar to the poll we just took, but I want you to be thinking a little bit deeper. So the first rung of the ladder is manipulation. And this is where youth are included to create the appearance of youth-inspired projects, but in reality, they're run by adults. The second rung is decoration. Youth are used to help with adult-initiated projects in a very indirect way. The third is tokenism. And this is where youth appear to be included, but really they have little or no choice in how they participate in adult-initiated projects. The fourth rung is youth-informed. Youth are assigned project roles by adults and are informed how and why they are being included. The next is youth consulted, where youth provide feedback on projects that are initiated and run by adults. Then we get up to the areas where there is real intentional arrangements designed to foster authentic youth engagement. 6, 7, and 8 is kind of where we're aspiring to get to. Youth adult equality. This is where adults initiate projects, but decision making is shared with the youth. Then you have completely youth-driven projects where youth initiate and direct projects while adults are in the supportive roles. And the last is youth-adult equity, where youth initiate projects and decision-making is shared with adults. So thinking about this ladder where steps 1, 2, and 3 is really representative of non-participation, 4, 5 is kind of a murky gray area, and 6, 7, and 8 is a very intentional design for authentic youth engagement. And I'm curious where you or your organization are on the ladder, and maybe think of a specific activity that you're working on. And if you could just sign in on the chat box, that would be great. Five, 6, 4. Great. So we have some 4s and 5s. So the good news is you're working your way up the ladder. I'm happy to see we don't have any 1, 2s, or 3s at this point. But the goal is to be up in 6, 7, and 8. And again, you know, you're going to be working with different projects and different sets of youth, and you may be up at a 7 with one group that you work with, but still at a 4 with another. But this is just to inform you to help know where you're trying to move towards. So there are a lot of ways to engage youth in leadership and decision making, and no one model is the model. Different models will work in different programs. So let's take a look at the different ways we can engage youth. So the first is youth as planners. By having young people help develop projects, they are involved in creating a vision, setting goals, and determining the objectives for the project. They can help identify needs, develop action plans and timelines, recruit volunteers, conduct community outreach, and evaluate the outcomes of the project. Working with program staff to design and implement a project gives young people a sense of ownership and accomplishment. Youth as trainers. Young people who are properly trained and supported can determine training needs, design a training program, and train both youth and adults about an issue, as well as provide the needed training and orientation to a project. Youth can also be used as evaluators. They can develop and implement surveys, conduct interviews, and document their findings. These activities help young people to develop and refine skills that they have learned, such as written or oral communication skills. It also helps programs and organizations understand if they are meeting their goals. A youth summit is a meeting that brings young people together from an organization, a specific geographic area, or around a specific issue. They provide young people an opportunity to voice their concerns and develop possible solutions. It's an opportunity for youth to network with each other, to share resources and ideas, and for youth and adults to gain a better understanding of each other's viewpoints. And then you also have youth advisory or action councils. These type of advisory groups can help make decisions, provide insight or advice to groups, which is usually made up of adults, and or address a specific issue. They take on different shapes and structures depending on the needs of the community. But to be successful, a youth advisory or action council must carefully be thought out, from its purpose to its role to its membership. Otherwise, the youth feel like they're brought together, and you get back to that whole issue of they don't feel like their voice is being heard. So you have to really know why you're bringing them together and what kind of advice you're seeking from them. Youth can also serve as funders. Young people can raise money, develop requests for proposals, review proposals, and determine who gets the money. Sometimes young people are funding youth-driven projects. Other times they're involved in broader initiatives to provide resources to community problem-solving efforts. And having youth involved in your funding is usually very attractive to funders themselves to see that you have youth engaged. Another role for youth is youth governance or youth on boards. When you combine the idea of young people as resources and honor their voices within organizations, it can result in their participation in organizational governance. Specifically, governance refers to serving as a full voting member on an organization board or governing structure. Youth governance then means that young people are equal stakeholders in decisions related to budget, staff, and strategic planning of an organization. Youth can also serve as policymakers. Many young people are actively involved in their communities through community or service learning. However, in order to further the goals and impact of young people in the community, we can connect this involvement with policy and other forms of civic engagement. Engaging youth as policymakers can help young people take their service efforts one more step towards sustainable community change. Engaging youth as policymakers can affect the policies that govern an organization or your community. This can help ensure that young people are not cleaning the same polluted river every year or whatever it is they're working on, but instead are helping set policies that will change the underlying social problem. So along the way, there are some challenges you will face. Youth voice models are effective tools for actively engaging youth in community change, but like anything, implementation of youth voice can pose some significant challenges. The common ones stem from balancing school and work schedules between the youth and those of adults, maintaining youth interest or commitment, and logistical issues like access to transportation. Especially if you live in rural areas like we do here in Vermont, transportation is one of the major barriers that we face. But some of the other challenges that you're going to face maybe personally is sharing power. Some adults have difficulty relinquishing power to youth during the planning and decision-making process. But at the same time, some youth may be uncomfortable with taking on the responsibility that come with having power. So there's going to be a push-pull that goes as you work your way through getting youth involved. And then there's stereotypes. Adults often have stereotypes about young people, and as a result, it may be easier to engage youth who have already been identified as leaders. Many adults reach out to youth that they think will act and perform like adults. And so by doing that, we're missing out on so many youth that can benefit from these kinds of experiences. We need to look at the youth that normally would never be selected in a leadership role. But on the flip side, young people also have stereotypes of adults, and this often leads to a lack of trust or skepticism from young people about adults' willingness to support and partner with them. So before you even get started, you have to address those stereotypes so that they don't become issues as you move forward in your project. And the last is viewing youth as recipients. Many adults and young people have difficulty seeing youth as leaders or resources in the community. And some don't believe that youth could offer something valuable. But from what I've learned from your poll earlier, I know that you all have moved past that. But you have to recognize that many adults and many youth do feel that way. And we need to get the message out that youth have a lot to offer our communities and can be agents of change. So some tips to working effectively with youth. You need to make sure that you're ready. And I'm going to give you some resources at the end where there's a survey you can take to kind of see where you're ready. There's some training that you can do, which is the next step. You really need to provide training for both your youth and adults so that they understand the common barriers, the common stereotypes, and work on breaking down those barriers so that they can work effectively together. And then you're really going to want to connect with other groups who have fully integrated youth into decision making and programming and learn from them. Other tips are you really need to loosen up. You know, and that kind of goes back to the sharing power. Sometimes we just cannot let go. We are afraid that any failure in a project that we're working with youth is a reflection on us, the adult, and we just need to loosen up about that. Failure is one of the best learning experiences youth can have, and even adults, and it's okay to fail, and we need to just be okay with that. You need to be active, meaning you need to go out and get the kids, recruit the kids, and put that extra effort in to invite them to be part of what you're doing. You need to respect their opinions. We've already talked about that. You need to provide opportunities for feedback so that the kids know that they're really being heard. And then above all else, you need to be patient because things might take twice as long to get done what you want to get done. But you have to look at it as a learning experience and a learning process, and that takes time. So the things to remember, and I wrote that this is for adults because there is a list of things to remember for youth, but I'm going to focus on you guys right now. Don't expect more from a youth than you would from another adult. You know, if a young person shows up 15 minutes late to a meeting, sometimes we think, oh, what a slacker, what, they don't wear a watch? But we don't think that same way about a fellow adult. We might think, oh, they're really busy, they probably got caught up at work. But realize young people have the same pressures that adults do. And so don't expect more from them. You know, you need to treat them equally. You also need to treat them as individuals. You don't want to lump them into a group as all youth are the same youth. Youth are very diverse. They are individuals. They have individuals' opinions, and they should not be a reflection of, you know, youth as a whole. So treat them as individuals. You need to really be careful about interrupting when they're speaking. They want to feel that they're valued and respected, and for many youth, when you interrupt them when they're speaking, they feel that you don't respect them. And they'll just stop talking, and chances are they won't start again. So let them finish their thought, let them know that you've heard them, and encourage them to keep speaking out. And the last thing to remember is it's okay to ask for help if you don't know how to do something. It's honest, and youth will appreciate that. If they ask you for something and you say, you know what, I don't know how to do that, they might know how to do that. I had that experience recently where I was with a youth board and we needed to Skype to have a meeting with someone, and I had never Skyped before. And I told the kids it was my first time, and they walked me right through it, and you know, I was just honest with them. I didn't try to hide that I didn't know how to do something, and they appreciated me for my honesty. So some of the resources, there is a ton of information out in the universe on youth voice, youth engagement. But a couple of resources that I really like is the National Youth Leadership Council. There's a whole section on youth voice. They also have a lot of interesting tools and resources on service learning. I would go to that website and really become familiar with it because they have a lot of wonderful things to share. They also do give a lot of webinars and have some free resources that you can download. And the other is the Innovation Center. I would go directly to the toolkits resources, and they have different training guides. So if you want to do a youth adult training, youth adult partnership training, they have several resources that have the activities and the agendas, and you don't have to recreate the wheel. I'd also be happy to share any other resources, books, articles, things that I've come across, but quite frankly it was just way too many to put up in a webinar. But you all can contact me, you know, if you want to explore things further. I am going to end here. I'd like to open it up if there are questions through the chat box. I'd be happy to answer. But I do want to leave you with this proverb: if spider webs unite, they can tie up a lion. And really just think about that. You know, don't ever underestimate the power of youth voice and your ability to create opportunities for youth to be authentically engaged. Because if we do this right, what it means is we are going to make sure that our society, our democratic society, will have the next generation have the skills, have the passion, have the know-how, how to stay involved in their communities and continue to make change. This is really important as we move further into the 21st century with some of the problems that our society will be facing in the coming years. And we really need to make sure that the youth, as they transition into adulthood, have the necessary skills so that they can be true contributing citizens in our society. And with that, I will open it up to questions if you have any, and if not, then I thank you for your time. Emily's asking, what would you identify as a best practice in engaging vulnerable or at youth specifically? You know, one of the things that I really harp on is a lot of the leadership programs and any sort of extracurricular school activity, schools will often reach out to the straight A student or the students that have already self-identified as being leaders. And I really think best practice is to go out and specifically ask these vulnerable or at-risk youth to be part of these leadership programs. We do a program here in Vermont where through after school in the elementary schools we offer 4-H leadership clubs. And we have the schools, the teachers specifically identify the at-risk youth or academically struggling youth to be part of this. And it's the first time that they've probably ever been invited to be part of something with the word leadership in it. And right then and there you begin to build their self-esteem, their self-confidence. And what people don't understand is that leadership is just not a trait you're born with. It's a skill set that needs to be developed, and there's a process. And why would we just ignore a whole subset of kids where every youth has the potential to learn and develop these skills? I hope that answered your question, Emily. If not, just ask a follow-up. Oh, thank you. Any other questions? Doesn't look like we have any. So again, I'll encourage all of you, if you think of anything later on, just feel free. My email, I believe, was listed already, but it's if not, I think Jeff will send it out. Just feel free to contact me. I do give trainings. I do special programs with youth. If you think of a way, if you want me to come train your youth or train your youth adult partner, youth adult group, just reach out to me and we can try to make something work. But I truly believe that we have to put a lot of time and effort into authentic youth engagement. So I do appreciate you all for listening in today.
Well, thank you, Lauren. That was an excellent presentation on a very important topic. That was great. So before everybody goes, I just have a couple things to tell you about and ask of you. The first is, if you guys haven't entered your email address into the chat box, could you please do that for me? That way I can send you a link to the recording of this webinar and notify you of any upcoming webinars. Great, thank you. And I just copied I just pasted a link to a survey that would be great if you guys could take a look at and respond to it. We like to collect much needed feedback from you participants regarding your experience with this webinar. And the next webinar in the Building Capacity series will take place on June 5th at 11 o'clock, and that topic will be strategic planning. The presenter will be Jane Van Buren. So we look forward to seeing all of you there for that next one. If you want more information on the Building Capacity project, you can see our web address is right there, uvm.edu/community/building-capacity, or you can always email us at capacity@uvm.edu. And that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you all very much for participating.